Earth was surrounded when the first quiet alarm spread through orbital command, and the last civilian shuttle slipped into shadowed hangars beneath the oceans, because the enemy fleets had arrived without spectacle, without broadcast threats, forming a perfect iron ring that glittered like a second sky, and the galaxy expected panic. But what unfolded inside human command rooms was calm calculation, where Admiral Bennett stood at the center of a circular table watching live projections. Update every second. Each hostile vessel tagged and categorized not by fear, but by function, while analysts murmured ranges and vectors, and Captain Aaron Cole of the Deep Space Defense Network spoke evenly about power curves and heat signatures, reminding everyone that the aliens believed surprise equaled victory, and that belief was already their weakness. Because for decades humanity had planned for the day when diplomacy would fail and Earth would stand alone and far above the atmosphere. The enemy commanders watched in confusion as no frantic transmissions erupted from the planet below, no weapons fired blindly, no fleets rushed forward, only silence, which unsettled them more than resistance. As a primary alien armada leader known among his kind, as Kethel observed, the human cities still glowed, traffic still moved, and the planet did not kneel. While inside the Planetary Defense Council chambers, President Daniel Harper listened as General Olivia Grant explained that the encirclement was tight but imperfect, that alien formations relied on mutual sensor overlap that assumed predictable responses, assumptions humans had learned to exploit through years of war games and bitter history. And as Harper authorized Phase 1 with a simple nod, the machinery of absolute precision began to move, not in dramatic launches, but in quiet internal shifts as dormant satellites adjusted orientation by fractions of degrees, as power reserves redirected through hardened grids, as encrypted signals passed through channels unknown to any alien algorithm, while on the lunar far side Commander Nathan Brooks oversaw arrays that the galaxy did not know existed, weapons not built for intimidation but for certainty. And Brooks thought the old doctrine drilled into every officer, that war was not about rage or pride, but about timing. Because humans had learned long ago that survival favored those who struck exactly once and never needed to strike again. And as the enemy, fleets tightened their ring, believing the delay meant fear. Kethel ordered demonstration volleys against empty space, beams flashing harmlessly to show power, but the response from Earth was still nothing, which caused murmurs among alien crews unaccustomed to prey that did not react, while deep beneath the Pacific Ocean Dr. Samuel Wright monitored reactor stability for systems that had never been tested outside simulation, his hands steady as he confirmed readiness and remembered the early days when such projects were dismissed as wasteful paranoia. And as the final confirmations aligned, Admiral Bennett spoke softly, telling her officers that the goal was not destruction for its own sake but correction, that the galaxy needed to learn a precise lesson. And when the order finally came, it was not shouted. It was whispered into a secure channel. And across near space a pattern unfolded too subtle for alien sensors to immediately parse, as human countermeasures did not fire outward, but inward, collapsing false data streams, introducing delays measured in milliseconds that cascaded into seconds, then minutes, blinding enemy coordination just long enough, because absolute precision did not mean speed alone. It meant knowing exactly when to move. And as the first alien cruisers lost formation without understanding why, Earth's defense grid activated not as a wall, but as a scalpel, selecting targets that mattered, command nodes, relay vessels, power distributors, and striking them with synchronized pulses that arrived simultaneously across 1,000 kilometers, an act that shattered the assumption of linear warfare. And from Kethel's command deck came disbelief as reports conflicted and screens went dark, while on Earth no cheers rose yet. Because humans understood that the opening move was only preparation, and that true response required patience. And as the encircling fleet staggered in confusion, humanity watched, measured, and waited, already calculating the next precise step. Confusion rippled through the enemy armadas as what they believed to be minor sensor faults spread into systemic blindness, because the humans had not attacked ships first, but understanding, and Kethel watched his tactical officers argue quietly as each console reported different truths, some insisting formations were intact, while others showed drifting vessels and silent relays. And this contradiction paralyzed decision, making it a species trained to obey perfect data. While on Earth, Admiral Bennett allowed exactly 30 seconds of observation before authorizing Phase 2, during which Captain Aaron Cole confirmed that 92% of hostile fleets were now operating on degraded coordination without realizing it. And this was the moment humanity had planned for, because human doctrine assumed enemies would cling to hierarchy even as it failed, and across orbital space Earth's hidden platforms revealed themselves not visually but functionally as gravitational anchors, snapped on around selected enemy carriers, locking them in place without firing a single visible shot, and alien engineers panicked as propulsion commands returned false confirmations, creating the illusion of control while ships remained frozen. And beneath the Atlantic, General Olivia Grant monitored terrestrial defenses as enemy probes attempted retaliatory scans only to be intercepted and erased so cleanly that the aliens did not realize they were gone, and President Harper listened to calm. Status updates that contrasted sharply with the chaos erupting beyond the atmosphere, because humanity did not measure success in explosions but in silence, and as Kethel finally ordered a full assault believing brute force would shatter resistance, the command never reached half his fleet, because human precision had already severed the pathways of authority. And when the first alien weapons fired blindly toward Earth, they were met not by shields but by absence, as entire volleys vanished into carefully engineered spatial distortions that bent energy away without reflection, leaving attackers confused as to whether they had hit or missed, while on the lunar far side Commander Brooks activated the deterrent arrays in a limited pattern designed not to annihilate, but to demonstrate inevitability. And 3 alien dreadnoughts lost power simultaneously, as their cores were neutralized by resonance pulses that human scientists had tuned after studying alien reactor harmonics for years. In secret, and this was the moment fear finally reached the enemy crews, because they understood they were being dissected methodically, not fought, and as reports of mobilized flagships spread, alien captains attempted independent retreats only to discover that exit vectors had been anticipated and blocked by human drones that move without emissions. And on Earth, Dr. Samuel Wright exhaled slowly as systems performed exactly as modeled, because absolute precision was not hope but mathematics. And Admiral Bennett addressed the council again, stating that the enemy still believed this was the full response, and that belief was necessary because humanity was not yet finished teaching the galaxy what happened when Earth was surrounded. As panic spread unevenly through the alien fleets, the lack of a unified response became their greatest vulnerability, because species that had dominated through overwhelming numbers had never needed redundancy of thought, and now each isolated commander reacted differently, some freezing, some firing wildly, some attempting surrender channels that never reached Earth, while Admiral Bennett deliberately ignored all incoming signals, understanding that uncertainty was now a weapon and inside. Orbital Command Captain Aaron Cole reported that secondary alien fleets positioned farther out were attempting to realign, unaware that human predictive models had already mapped every likely adjustment. And with a quiet authorization phase, 3 began as Earth's outer defense layers shifted from disruption to demonstration, releasing autonomous human strike craft that did not accelerate aggressively, but glided into position with deceptive calm, each one carrying systems designed not for prolonged combat, but for decisive correction, and alien sensors finally detected these craft only when they were already embedded within fleet geometries, because they move along blind corridors created minutes earlier by human signal shaping, and Kethel felt something unfamiliar as his remaining advisors spoke in fractured reports, something that resembled being hunted, because every choice seemed anticipated, and when he ordered a regroup around his flagship, he discovered that proximity itself had become dangerous, as human systems exploited tightly packed formations by inducing cascading power instabilities that forced ships apart or into shutdown, and far below President Harper approved the release of controlled planetary broadcasts to selected alien channels, not boasting or threatening, but stating in simple terms that Earth would not pursue annihilation, only compliance, and that resistance would be corrected with precision, and this message unsettled alien listeners more than any threat because it framed their invasion as a solvable error. While on the lunar installations, Commander Brooks watched as targeted alien logistics ships lost navigation and drifted harmlessly away, cutting supply chains without dramatic destruction, and General Olivia Grant noted that no ground invasion attempts were even being considered anymore, because the enemy now understood they would never reach atmosphere. And Dr. Samuel Wright confirmed that reactor loads remained stable, despite unprecedented output, proving that human preparation had not been exaggerated. And as the battle space grew quieter, not louder, the galaxy began to witness something new, a war where the dominant power refused spectacle, refused rage, and applied force like an engineer tightening a system until it functioned only one way. And Kethel finally understood that surrounding Earth had not been a show of strength, but an admission of fear, because humanity had responded not as prey, but as a central stabilizing force correcting an imbalance. And as his flagship lost the last of its external coordination and drifted powerless among disabled allies, he realized the encirclement had reversed, not spatially but strategically, and Earth now defined the boundaries of the conflict with absolute precision. The silence that followed was heavier than the chaos that came before, because entire enemy fleets now floated in control paralysis, and the galaxy was watching feeds filled not with burning wreckage, but with immobilized armadas. And this unsettled observers more deeply than total destruction ever could, while on Earth Admiral Bennett allowed herself a single breath before authorizing Phase 4, which was never intended to be violent but instructional, and Captain Aaron Cole coordinated, with deep intelligence teams open limited communication windows to specific alien command ships, not to negotiate, but to ensure the message reached those capable of understanding consequences. And when the channels opened, Kethel saw a human face the first time, calm, tired, and utterly unafraid, as Bennett spoke without raised voice, explaining that Earth had detected the fleet movements months earlier, that every vector and formation had been studied, and that the current state of their armada was not an accident, but the expected outcome. And this revelation shattered the last illusion of alien superiority, because it meant humanity had not reacted but prepared. While across the trapped fleet's alien crews struggled with a psychological weight of helplessness, as systems responded sluggishly or not at all, and engineers realized that repairs were impossible without human permission. And President Harper addressed his own people privately, reminding them that restraint was not weakness, that dominance without control was chaos, and that Earth would define a new standard of power based on certainty rather than terror. And as Commander Brooks initiated the gradual restoration of limited functionality to select ships as a demonstration of control, alien commanders understood that their survival now depended entirely on human choice. While General Olivia Grant reviewed projections showing that no external reinforcements would arrive in time even if summoned, because the demonstration had already spread through galactic channels, discouraging escalation, and Dr. Samuel Wright watched reactor outputs decline smoothly as systems transitioned from combat readiness to containment, proud not destruction, but precision achieved under pressure, and Kethel finally lowered his crest in a gesture of submission his species rarely performed, acknowledging that surrounding Earth had been a catastrophic miscalculation, because humanity had not needed to break the ring with force. They had simply taken control of everything within it. And as Earth's defense network maintained its quiet dominance, the galaxy began to understand that human warfare was not about how hard they struck, but how completely they decided the outcome. As the implications of absolute human control rippled through the galaxy, alien species began to grasp the magnitude of their misjudgment, because what they had assumed to be instinctive aggression and chaotic emotion was in fact disciplined strategy and patient calculation, and Kethel's fleet, still immobilized yet intact, became a symbol of human mastery over both technology and anticipation, while Admiral Bennett, aware that the galaxy now watched every movement, chose not to flaunt dominance but to extend a controlled demonstration of human capability, authorizing Captain Aaron Cole to deploy stealth reconnaissance units among alien ships, units that emitted no signals, revealed no presence, yet gathered exhaustive data on enemy systems, crew reactions, and command hierarchies, feeding this into predictive models that allowed humans to know each potential move before it was conceived. And beneath the Atlantic, General Olivia Grant coordinated the planetary defense network to align with orbital operations, ensuring every sensor, interceptor, and launch array operated in seamless synchrony, while Dr. Samuel Wright adjusted reactor outputs to support sustained operations without stressing the systems, knowing that the demonstration must continue without failure. And President Harper held counsel with his strategic advisors, reminding them that restraint amplified power, that humanity's response had already rewritten expectations, and that the galaxy's perception of humans as weak or primitive would now be impossible to reverse. And as Commander Brooks monitored lunar and deep space installations, he noted the alien response patterns shifting from confusion to fear, then to cautious compliance, because human precision had removed chaos as a weapon, leaving only the inevitability of outcome. And across thousands of kilometers of interstellar space, the first alien delegates attempted direct communication, seeking to negotiate, to understand, to plead, and Admiral Bennett allowed messages in carefully curated channels, responding with measured information that guided, corrected, and informed, while simultaneously reinforcing the impossibility of unauthorized action. And Kethel realized with chill that his armada was no longer fighting humanity, but following it, obeying rules they had not created, trapped in a matrix of human foresight that extended across sensor grids, communication networks, and predictive algorithms. And as Earth maintained this quiet dominance, fleets beyond visual range began to reconsider aggression. Treaties were proposed without prompting, and the galaxy slowly acknowledged that human warfare was unlike anything it had encountered. It was not violent spectacle, but deliberate orchestration, a demonstration that survival, strategy, and precision could be absolute, and that underestimation of humanity now carried consequences measured not in lost ships alone, but in systemic collapse of confidence across entire civilizations. As the galaxy began to absorb the full scale of humanity's orchestration, alien commanders struggled to comprehend the systematic precision they faced, because every attempt to regain initiative was anticipated and neutralized without direct confrontation, and Kethel's flagship remained at the center of a living web of control, where humans had not merely surrounded them but embedded themselves into every critical function of the alien fleet, so that propulsion, targeting, communication, and power systems all moved according to human design. While Admiral Bennett convened her senior officers to discuss the next measured step, emphasizing that absolute precision required patience and observation rather than destruction, and Captain Aaron Cole monitored live feeds of alien crews attempting improvisation, noting with satisfaction that every calculated adjustment fell within predictive envelope humanity had established months prior, and across Earth's orbital platforms autonomous drones continued silent repositioning, forming geometries that subtly reinforced containment of enemy fleets without overt aggression, while General Olivia Grant coordinated ground and orbital redundancies to ensure no accidental breaches could occur, and Dr. Samuel Wright fine-tuned reactor and energy grids to allow long-duration operations without fatigue or error, recognizing that human endurance and meticulous engineering would now define the operational tempo. And President Harper reflected on decades of preparation, understanding that what had once been theory was now applied reality, a demonstration of patience, precision, and overwhelming foresight that had rendered the galaxy's dominant species impotent without a single full-scale strike. And on lunar installations, Commander Brooks observed the final stages of synchronization, where subtle gravitational and electromagnetic manipulations held fleets in perfect containment, teaching a lesson without destruction, while alien delegates transmitted urgent inquiries seeking guidance, not defiance, and Bennett responded in calm, measured language, emphasizing that Earth's position was not aggression but correction, and that any unilateral movement would be met with calibrated responses already in place. And Kethel finally recognized that human control was not temporary, that it extended beyond brute force into every facet of operational reality, and as reports confirmed, continued compliance across the immobilized armada. Humanity's demonstration evolved into a living testament. The galaxy had underestimated the species that thrived under pressure, that planned with precision, and that responded not with panic, but with calculated inevitability. And this realization spread through every corner of interstellar politics, fundamentally redefining how humans were perceived, not as impulsive primitives, but as architect of outcomes, whose absolute precision now dictated the terms of engagement across systems that had once mocked them. By the seventh phase of humanity's demonstration, the alien fleets had become a study in control futility, because every maneuver, every attempt at coordination, every desperate effort to regain autonomy was anticipated, measured, and corrected by human systems that extended from orbital command centers to deep space installations beyond detection. And Admiral Bennett oversaw the operation with quiet focus, knowing that the galaxy's perception was now as important as the physical containment, while Captain Aaron Cole tracked hundreds of minute adjustments across enemy formations, confirming that predictive models held true even under unanticipated environmental variables. And across the lunar platforms, Commander Brooks initiated subtle recalibrations that increased the illusion of choice for alien commanders while tightening their operational envelope, giving humans full control without visible aggression. and General Olivia Grant ensured planetary defenses reinforced this. Orchestration, ready to respond instantly if a single vessel attempted unauthorized movement, while Dr. Samuel Wright maintained energy outputs that allowed continuous operations without system degradation, proving that human endurance and engineering could sustain dominance indefinitely, and President Harper addressed the Strategic Council privately, emphasizing that humanity's aim was to establish clarity of consequence, not mere destruction, and that this measure control would redefine interstellar diplomacy, because when the galaxy realized that humans did not rely on brute force but on absolute foresight, fear became a tool as effective as any weapon, and alien political channels erupted with debate as fleets reported immobilization, failed commands, and the unnerving awareness that humans were operating not just around them but through them, while Kethril grappled with the concept that an enemy could orchestrate outcomes without visible strikes. That patience, precision, and calculation could surpass fleets in firepower, and as Earth continued its silent, systematic demonstration, the galaxy witnessed a new paradigm of warfare, one where dominance was expressed in anticipation rather than destruction, control rather than chaos, and inevitability rather than reaction. And in this moment, humanity solidified its reputation, not as a species to be challenged lightly, but as a measured, relentless force whose absolute precision dictated the pace, scope, and consequences of interstellar engagement, and the alien fleets, still intact yet impotent, became both a warning and a lesson, demonstrating that underestimation of humanity now carried consequences that were not violent for spectacle, but exacting for principle, and that the galaxy itself was being reshaped around the unyielding logic and foresight of a single planet that had refused to bow. As the final phase unfolded, the galaxy reached a moment of uneasy clarity, because every alien command network, every fleet coordination system, every independent decision node had been methodically aligned, corrected, or neutralized by human foresight, and Admiral Bennett monitored the operation with steady hands, understanding that the culmination was not measured in destruction, but in undeniable authority, while Captain Aaron Cole oversaw autonomous units that moved seamlessly through immobilized fleets, collecting data, reinforcing containment, and subtly reorienting alien formations to reflect precision of human strategy. And across Earth, General Olivia Grant ensured that terrestrial and orbital defenses remained synchronized, creating a lattice of control that could respond instantly to any deviation, while Dr. Samuel Wright maintained reactor and power systems at optimal performance, guaranteeing uninterrupted operational capacity, and Commander Brooks adjusted lunar and deep space installations to maintain gravitational and electromagnetic equilibrium, ensuring that immobilized fleets remained in position without overt force, while President Harper reflected on decades of preparation, realizing that humanity had demonstrated a capability far beyond simple military might, one that combined patience, calculation, endurance, and foresight to redefine interstellar engagement, and as alien delegations sent urgent communications seeking guidance, compliance, or reprieve, Admiral Bennett responded with measured clarity, outlining conditions for survival and cooperation that reinforced a lesson. Humanity was not to be underestimated, and control was absolute, not through fear alone, but through precise anticipation and execution. And Kethril, still at the heart of his immobilized armada, finally acknowledged the depth of miscalculation his species had committed, understanding that surrounding Earth had not been a show of strength but an exposure of vulnerability. And as the galaxy absorbed the reality of this demonstration, treaties were drafted, fleets were restrained, and civilizations began to recalibrate their approach to humanity, not as impulsive primitives, but as architects of inevitability, while across thousands of kilometers of space human systems maintained their subtle, omnipresent control, ensuring that any future threat will be met not with chaos or rage, but with measured, absolute precision. And in this final stage, the galaxy recognized that Earth had not merely defended itself. It had rewritten the rules of engagement, establishing a new standard of strategy, foresight, and dominance. And in that understanding, humanity's lesson was complete, unassailable, and permanent.